気まままいろうと他にあり何度もトライアル&エラー気分上々急上昇だから深いもの深しいろんメロン食べちゃうもんいつも5枚ベーコン任さずイライラをためたってためになんかつかない
Hi, this is Julius Chambers, and this is the Muckraker Politics podcast number dos. And I am joined today by John Rourke, Softy,
Hello.
and what is your name?
Buta-san.
Buta-san. Apparently that means pig or some.
No, it means Buta-san.
Whatever the hell that is.
Like the deity, or he wasn't a deity. He ate a lot, but he also just drank from a gecko tree or
He
something.
was a fat guy who meditated.
The Buddha? The Buddha?
Brother.
The Buddha.
Well,
Anyway.
today we're going to be talking about a trip to Japan that we all took together, and it's not in the way that you're thinking, but
We only stay in one love hotel.
in that last podcast eons ago, I discussed this, and we're back with our results, our finds, our tips and observations. If you go to muckrakerpolitics.com, as Bill O'Reilly would say, I don't know why he says .com, it's .com. I wrote about the 11 tips and observations while traveling in Japan. So I'm so freaking cheap that I only spent about $250 on food and all the events, even after I paid this Rourke guy back.
Sugar
And-
daddy.
And the plane ticket was about $1,200, and the hotels, like when we pooled all of our money, was like $200 per person. So like a lot of people think Japan is expensive, which it actually is one of the most expensive countries, but you can actually do the travel pretty inexpensively and like pretty cheaply if you just like pool your resources. But during peak season, the ticket is probably going to be a little over $1,000, so that's still going to be a bit of an expense.
Yeah, I think going at the end of May, right before the June rush, sort of was a good call too. So.
And just to be clear, like, we didn't go specifically to experience the food, right? I mean, there's a lot of people
Yeah.
that go just to experience food, and they're not going to be spending $200.
Yeah,
They're
you
going to be
drop a
spending.
lot more if you were. going
We
for that,
frequented the Combini
Yeah.
a lot.
And small restaurants where we ordered like a $5,000 piece of meat, and then just that was it. No, well, not really, but
If we'd gone a few weeks earlier, we could have caught cherry blossom season, though.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah, we saw
Golden
not
Week and all
we
that
saw not
stuff or
a
whatever.
cherry blossom of any
Yeah.
sort.
So that kind of sucked, but.
In the summer and the spring, the spring and like the late summer, early fall, there's a lot more festivals, and we unfortunately missed all those.
Yeah, but Buddha was still in the monastery or whatever. He was still at school learning. So.
yeah,
Though we did see Trump.
yeah, we
Oh,
saw his
yeah.
Well,
motorcade.
indirectly.
I wasn't expecting to see that because like I heard he was going there, but I was thinking like we're not actually going to see his motorcade. But lo and behold,
Yeah.
a stern Japanese man just like waved us over to the sidewalk, and there were these like minions being paid to like support Trump, and they were like, 4 more year, we want Trump. And there was actually a chant by the local Japanese like supporters of Trump, and that was kind of cool.
Unlike in
that's what it
America
was,
where
right?
people like throw rocks at the motorcade or something.
Yeah. They're like chimping out.
Make us spook 'em.
In Japan they were very orderly about that, but anyway, we're gonna talk about that. But in the article, I started it by saying, when my plane touched down in Tokyo last Monday, it was a new day. It was actually way before last Monday, but when I wrote this. It was like a few weeks ago. And by that, I mean it was literally a new day. Given the 13-hour time difference between Japan and my home base in the eastern USA, if you live in the Northeast, flying to Tokyo is one of the longest direct flights in the world, unless you're going to Singapore. And flying west, it never got dark outside for even an hour. Yeah, so that was a weird experience. Like you're flying 13 hours ahead, so like you're flying west, and the plane it's always just a light out basically. Although they
No one
close
had
the
their
shades
windows
after.
open like at all the
Yeah.
entire flight. Like not
Yeah,
a single
the
window.
So yeah, it was I could tell that it was light out, but like the windows were all closed because everyone was trying to sleep.
So
But-
we were up for, I don't know.
I don't want to think
It
about
was
it.
over 20. It was over 24 hours. I mean, if we woke up on what was that, Sunday morning, and yeah. So, but I don't know. When we touched down, I felt pretty good.
Yeah.
But I'm
I
a
was
Buddha.
I was really surprised just how much when they adjusted the lighting on the plane several times throughout the trip. It really changed like what time of day I felt like it was, and I think that
Yeah.
actually did a lot to help me overcome the weird time difference.
Yeah. It changed my life. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Found it
that
enlightening.
actually did help. Though, in all honesty.
Complimentary daylight.
But yeah, no, I don't think we really felt jet lagged at all. I mean, the collective consciousness, in true Asian spirit, we became a collective consciousness as soon as we touched down. But yeah, I don't think we really felt jet lagged at all. At least going there, coming back, it kind of hit me hard, but that was different. I don't know.
Well, I had a
anyway.
bit of a different experience coming back, but
Yeah.
You were pretty spooked by the
Skookum.
the cancellation of your flight.
don't
in
fly Air
Toronto.
Canada
Uh-oh.
unless they decide to
You're in trouble
sponsor
for
us. In which case, I will tell you to
There's
fly
some
Air
disclaimer
Canada.
to throw in. Like, anyway. Yeah.
Air Canada is actually not that bad. The food isn't great, but it's a
Yeah,
cheap.
I mean, they
it's
had quite a few meals. I was fairly surprised, and
They do stuff you with like subpar frozen food.
People always complain about the in-flight meals, and like some of the food like wasn't that great, but like it wasn't bad food. Like I found all of it
Yeah, yeah.
adequately edible.
That's true. But anyway, like culturally, in terms of like Japan, China and Japan, I've never been to China, but from what I've heard, Japan definitely was like one of the most different cultures I've been to. Like it was way different than even Latin America, or I guess I don't really remember it, but I went to like Europe as a kid. But like compared to the Western cultures, Japan was definitely much more of a collective, and it was just it was a totally different experience from the West. So we're going to talk about that later. And you might be pleasantly surprised, or maybe a bit of a culture shock if you decide to go to Japan. But the trip only lasted about 8 days, and we jam-packed the hell out of the schedule because we wanted to see as much as possible. And we milked like hundreds of miles out of our train passes. We walked like 5 miles a day or something like that.
Well, more than that.
Yeah, probably more than that even. And we were mostly on Honshu. In fact, we were entirely on Honshu, which
Yeah.
is the main island of Japan. But yeah, it contains almost all the major cities, like from Tokyo to Hiroshima, and the only major cities that are not on Honshu are Sapporo, which is in Hokkaido, the North Island, and Nagasaki, which is in one of the southern islands.
Kyushu.
Yeah, Kyushu, and
Thank you.
it's along this urban corridor.
Buddha
that-
sassy. Buddha got no time for that. Jeez.
where there's like 100 million people. So that's basically all the travel you're going to do if you're in Japan. But Japan also has the 50 busiest train stations in the world, and you can travel like all the way out to the countryside and stuff, and basically access all the major cities if you get this JR pass. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But one of the other things is the first point is that there aren't a lot of garbage cans or seats in Japan. I said for every person in Japan, there are .003 public garbage receptacles and .00005 seats. Well, I actually just pulled that out of my ass. That's not a real statistic, but there. Even though it's a great.
But see,
point,
if you
but-
pulled it out of your ass, you'd have to do it standing up because you wouldn't be able to sit down to kind of access your ass. But yeah, no, it's pretty much right.
I mean,
it was
yeah,
pretty surprising just how clean everything is, despite the fact there's no trash cans anywhere, basically. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I guess
it's kind of
there's
just
trash
to
cans
America
being
where there's
trash
like
and-
a trash can on every single corner and people still can't be bothered to walk to one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's like if you're Patterson and Gimlin and you go looking for Bigfoot, you see Bigfoot. Like if you're looking to throw out trash in a trash can, it like attracts more trash. So it's like by not having the end realization, you like avoid the inception of it or whatever. And it's interesting. But
Well, the trash though wasn't as big of a deal as the seating. I mean,
Especially,
We would walk
especially with how
all
much
day.
walking we were doing. Yeah, like I was desperate for seating.
Yeah, the fact that there was no seating after we were hiking this big mountain where we had to run through these extremely dangerous tunnels. This was a temple, a Buddhist temple that's like from the year like 13 something, or no, it's actually 700, but they rebuilt it in like the 1700s, I think. And it has the biggest Buddha in all of Japan. It's like 101 feet. And in order to get there, there's the option to take a ropeway, or there's an option to like go through these tunnels, but the tunnels are so
Definitely
dangerous.
take the ropeway.
The ropeway isn't that expensive, but we
I wouldn't
decided
consider
to
that really an option. That was.
we decided to dash through these tunnels and like get
Even
to
the Buddha's like the path too hard.
And the Buddha was like gone from meditating to like committing seppuku and killing himself because it was
His waistline shrunk 3 sizes that day. He just sweat it all out. Yeah.
I think that's the Grinch.
His earlobes curled up.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a great temple. It's the Nihonji Temple in on the Boso Peninsula.
Yeah, that was.
You have to
cool.
take a train system. You can take the JR from Tokyo, past Tokyo Disneyland, and then out to the countryside, and it's really beautiful out there with the mountains and things like that. But definitely take the ropeway and don't take the
Stairs.
the stairs, the tunnels if you're gonna go there.
I guess we should mention that as you get farther out of the city, the English dies off
Yeah.
exponentially.
Yeah.
So,
But there are still vending machines everywhere.
There's still the vending machines. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that is true.
and the train still ran pretty well. I mean, it probably wasn't as remote as it seemed, but yeah, just being so far removed from kind of the hustle and bustle was pretty interesting. So.
Yeah. And there was this woman who we met who was complaining about the English, and she's like,
Oh, yeah.
she said she spoke multiple languages, but she said like she didn't speak any Japanese, and like her son was doing like Disney on Ice or something like that, and we were thinking, gay.
I was just thinking, in the hallowed recesses of this Buddhist temple, of like this lithe young man skating around. I don't know. It was an interesting moment. It was. I found some enlightenment, maybe.
But she was nice. But anyway.
Now that we've torn her to pieces, I mean, she was
We
nice.
trashed her going the entire way back.
I mean, she also did say her father worked at Oak Ridge, so
Yeah.
After she gave us a recommendation too for something fun to do, we
Yeah, she gave us a recommendation to go to this Buddhist ceremony, which is like the eastern part of Tokyo. I forgot exactly where it was, and you can actually see a Buddhist ceremony in session, and they have you they go up and they bless their bags, and they light a fire, and they have incense, and they have
large drums,
banging of the drums, and it's all very elaborate and very interesting. It's a good cultural experience if you want to see something different than the typical tourist stuff there. But there were times that after walking a ways, it was a bit onerous to not have seats, except in a few train stations. So we had to like sit on the steps, which is kind of rude, but like there was no other choice because
which is, I guess, what explains why the Japanese are so thin.
basically.
In part, I think it. Just,
No, I think that's why.
That's true.
Yeah,
You're right.
yeah.
it's nothing to do with the diet.
Nothing to do with plastics or hormones. No. But anyway,
We'll get to that in point 3, you fool. I'll meet you again in point 3 of this article.
Don't disrespect the Buddha.
That's right.
But anyhow, another thing that we noticed is there's a lot of vending machines throughout the country. Like they're pretty nice. A Japanese company actually bought 7-Eleven too. So there's all sorts of these like really unique foods. It's almost like a supermarket. There's like ice cream in a bag, or like these really interesting different sandwiches that are like they're like wrapped in like a vacuum packed like little bag, so they're relatively fresh, I guess, in that sense. And you can just buy all sorts of different really like there's a lot of egg, there's bento boxes, there's
They had
all
the
sorts of
corn and mayonnaise bun.
there was some really interesting stuff.
Boss coffee in this.
I
Coffee
think
Boss?
most of those 7-Eleven things, as I think you pointed out, Softy, there was a little disclaimer. It was like we try to bring you the quote unquote freshly baked flavor, so they're using in quotes as if
It may not be
who
freshly
knows
baked,
where
but we
it
hope
came
it
from.
tastes that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was like cold tea, iced coffee, soda, and it was about $150 in US dollars, which is about 150 yen for like these different drinks in the subway or you could find them in the subway, you could find them in on the street, even in the countryside, in like the smallest of towns, like hiking up a mountain or something. They were everywhere, And you can actually, not in the countryside so much, but in the Tokyo area, you can use a Passmo or Suica card, which are the cards that are separate from the prepaid JR Pass. The Suica and the Passmo allow you to take the subway, and you can also use those for drink purchases, and it'll show you your remaining balance on the machine. So that's kind of helpful. And then you refill these cards at the train station. But surprisingly, like since the credit card fees are a bit onerous, everything is mostly done in cash when you're like at a restaurant and stuff. I think that they do accept credit card, but they like to accept cash. So if you go there, make sure to bring plenty of yen. So with regard to the JR is pretty convenient. You can get this pass online through a French company if you live in America. Usually it's through the French. And if you can get it for like 7 days, or you can get it for like 2 weeks, and you pay like a flat fee, usually around $250 for a week or so, and it allows you to use like the bullet train everywhere. You can take it from, we stayed in Yokohama. You can take it from Yokohama outside of Tokyo, like use the bullet train right into Tokyo like every day, and then you can use the bullet train all the way down to Hiroshima, all the way back. Whereas a normal trip from Tokyo to Kyoto is around $70 just one way, but this is $250, like all the way down, all the way back from the city and back to your hotel. You can use the bullet train, and you can use all these different, many of the local lines too, and it's pretty inexpensive. So the JR Pass is definitely the way to go, but I've heard it doesn't go up to the northern island of Hokkaido, so you'd have to get a different train pass or different train if you want to go all the way up there, though.
Yeah, there were some restrictions, like you can't take the super fast Shinkansen, or you know. But I mean, we got around all right, and I mean, we made it. We're back. So
yeah, it's the train system is really good. It's always on time. They have cleaning crews they literally like value gender roles so much that they actually have the men dress in blue and the women dress in pink, and they have them cleaning the train, the Shinkansen high-speed train, like really fast, like going in within a few minutes and just like scrubbing it and like turning the seats around and doing everything. And then they bow and they look both ways and they demonstrate train safety, and they just leave, and it's pretty cool to watch that. So the definitely get the JR Pass if you're going to Japan and you want to take the stay in a hotel that is like near a train station, so that you can just like walk a little ways and pretty much go everywhere.
And you don't really need to worry about English in the stations, because it was everywhere. I mean, on the signs and a lot of the voices usually too, the announcements that were going on. Yeah,
I was gonna say that. Yeah, I wrote in one of my points in the article that English is widely available for. There's usually an initial announcement in a cute voice, and I miss those cute voices. Damn it! There's a cute voice that's like. They use a lot of gozaimasu. They're like arigato gozaimashita, and they just use like a cute little voice to send you off.
Your voice isn't as cute.
Yeah, it's not as cute.
I can use some gozaimasu.
They use a lot of the gozaimasu, and they use a lot of gozaimashita and arigato and all that cute stuff.
It warms the heart, a good gozaimasu.
And then and then there's like usually a female British accent that repeats it, and it's like, the Tokaido line. Yeah. Next
Ladies
stop.
And gentlemen, you are on the Shinkansen.
Yeah.
Get off now.
Don't talk on your phone and be a pig.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in Japan who, like my dad was saying in the USA, he was noticing that a lot of people check their emails like when they're riding the train or they're like doing business in like an airport. But in Japan, it's even though they're on their phones maybe a little bit too much, like the US, they do spend more of their time relaxing. Like you'll see like a 50-year-old playing Candy Crush or something like that. So that's kind of cool. They're just instead of just like checking their emails, they're just kind of like relaxing on the train.
Well, I think like not being as social is like more accepted there too, or you're kind of just like there's a natural disposition to maybe be more reserved. Whereas like if you do that in America, you're either being kind of like unpleasant or you just are kind of socially awkward or something. So it's definitely a different aesthetic or a different kind of cultural expectation as well. So that might be part of it too. So what do I know?
And there's generally not like much talking on the trains. People are reserved and they're respectful.
Yeah, that's part of it too. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Even if we could have communicated, we wouldn't have engaged in like small talk or anything with.
Yeah. Although I learned some good Japanese words like table is teberu or milk is milku. Or, some of it's kind of annoying that they actually, there was a period, I guess, where they let kind of these English words really come into their or pantsu or something, for pants and like
Starbucks.
And in
Actually,
terms,
you'll find pantsu more often refers to underwear as opposed to like trousers.
Oh yeah, I guess that's true.
oh, I see.
Oh, then what did I? Never mind.
And if you're either worried about groping or if you're hoping to get groped on the train, that's probably not going to happen. You're in really close quarters sometimes, but essentially Japan does have female only cars if you want to ride one of those. But essentially, groping is such a small problem. They only had like hundreds of complaints in a metro area of 38 million. So essentially, the Japanese are really good at stamping out almost all problems. So the fact that we draw attention to this, or the fact that people think about groping on the Japanese trains, is because attention has been drawn to it to try to eliminate it entirely. But the fact is that it's a lot less of a problem than in almost any other metro in the world. So they're basically just trying to, get rid of the few instances of it that are left. But by and large, it doesn't happen at all, basically. And yet they still have separate cars for females to ride to feel safer, even though it's really not much of a problem at all. So they really do take care of their people and make sure that nothing happens, even though it isn't that big of a problem to begin with. So you're almost definitely not going to find problems with that in almost and even the gropers in Japan, from what I've heard, are pretty mild compared to like a rapist in the like they just like sniff your hair or something. They're not even like
They're like tier 2.
They're not like attacking you and pinning you to the wall.
I've heard the best cure actually, or the best way to ward it off, is pure accelerationism. Like everything, like you just force them to grope you. You force them to grope you harder, and they'll back off.
No, I guess if we're talking about safety, are we talking about safety now? If we're talking about
eightfold path to safety,
that's one of the eight.
Like an octagon or something.
If we are talking about safety, then it was amazing how safe it seemed in even the really, even in Tokyo and Kyoto. Like, we would see kids that must have not been older than, what, 4th grade?
Yeah,
the swaddling kind.
Yeah, the one that are swaddled. And they were just walking around. Sometimes they were in groups, which is good, but they were just walking around, on the streets, or they would be taking the subway alone, and it's like, geez, they feel safe, I guess, that nothing's going to happen to them, which is...
Yeah, I wrote in the article that, in Japan, there's many kids who are just totally independent from a young age, and they still grow up well because they're raised in a 2-parent home and they're taught to be respectful. They even clean their own schools and serve each other lunch in the classroom. The kids take turns doing that. So they're taught to respect public property, and they're taught that they can call upon any member of the community if they need help. So if they're attacked or if they need help in public, like finding directions, they could potentially call upon any member of the community to help them out, to find their way or help protect them. And that's part of what Asian collectivism is all about. And that's why parents are it's a pretty homogenous. There's very little diversity. It's mostly an ethnically homogenous society, and therefore people are trusting of their neighbors and friends, and basically they share all the same common cultural values and things like that. So yeah, there's a show in Japan called My First Errand, which is about kids making their way at a young age around the subway and whatnot. And there's also in the Miyazaki film, what's that film where they work on the clubhouse together?
From Up on Poppy Hill.
Up on Poppy Hill. Yeah, they rebuild like this ancient piece of public property that they use for like a clubhouse for activities. And they work together and the kids all work on it. So that illustrates that sort of respect for public property and the independence that the Japanese kids have at a young age.
Yeah.
That's how you were brought up, right, Softy?
No comment? There's not even a comment in there? Just letting air out of a balloon or something?
Yeah, he's actually half Japanese, and we got to see his relatives there, and that was pretty cool. Or like it's better to have relatives, like someone that there, because as a Westerner, you can talk to them. Otherwise, like a lot of the people there is a bit of a cultural gap, which I don't blame them for not being too trusting. But like essentially, if you are there and you are on vacation, you probably will end up interacting with mostly like other Westerners or people who speak English, because a lot of people, Japanese nationalism is becoming a bigger thing, and they're taking more pride in their culture, and they're writing like books and producing. Even Attack on Titan is sort of a nationalistic anime that promotes their own culture, and there's a very it's very. I've heard people who are white who have claimed to be part Japanese who have done better in the dating world, for example, even though they're not Japanese. And I've heard that if you speak Japanese and you're at least part Japanese, you stand a better chance of fitting in. But regardless, if you learn the language, that's if you want to actually spend time living there. Learning the language is the biggest factor into like at least partially integrating.
Yeah. And honestly, this whole the Pan-Asian kind of extension into the media, the animes and whatever, it makes people who idealize Japan want to go there and stuff. So they'll go in a tourist capacity, but they'll end up there, and I mean they'll probably realize that the culture is so sort of fastidious, but also that they're not really probably gonna immediately ingratiate or take in kind of these white foreigners into their culture. So it's great for tourism, but then they also get to kind of preserve their homogenous kind of society by kind of keeping you at arm's length and selling you their media essentially. So I guess it works out pretty well. I mean, it is a great society, it seems like it, but definitely inaccessible if you don't kind of just have the face to show for it, literally, unless you get like plastic surgery or something.
So yeah, if you learn the language and you did really want to try to like live there for a while and fit in, you probably would do well in business and dating if you learn the language and just really try to learn the manners and the politeness and everything. But there will be some amount of disconnect because it is a much different culture, and it's based on common ethnicity and common culture. So, we did go to a Catholic church there, and in the Catholic church that's more Western centric. So they were a little bit more. The priest was a foreigner. He was from like Mexico or something, but he almost looked Asian. I don't know what was going on there. But
Convergent evolution.
That's right. Yeah.
But since Christianity is mostly like a Western thing, they were quick to like embrace us, or like not physically, but they were quick. They were
not
quick.
At all. The sign of peace was just bowing.
Oh yeah, we were bowing like just.
Yeah, that was kind of cool. Yeah. But another thing I noticed there is there's basically zero fat people. There's like, except for a few old people, there's like no obesity.
Yeah.
Everyone walks around. Everyone bikes.
What
did you say?
Because they don't have anywhere to sit.
Yeah.
Back to this again. It's gonna beat this point into the ground.
Beat a dead horse.
It's like specious reasoning, but it's like it sounds good.
But yeah, there was very few tattoos. Even the girls, even though they have the reputation for having like the dyed anime hair, they mostly just had like shoulder length hair that was either their normal color or like highlighted with like a light brown, which is fine if you have dark hair. So like there was no craziness or tattoos, and most people just dressed in like black, white, or gray during the work week, and then they were a little bit more stylish during the weekend. And they had like A-line skirts normally. I think that's what it's called.
Who knows?
I looked up this crap and I was like,
I don't care. But being among all these people who are in like good shape or like clearly care about their diets and stuff, you don't exactly realize it until it's not there anymore. And like just being around normal people in America, I mean, it's almost like a visceral reaction where you just
when you
like,
come back, yeah.
Oh my God, yeah, you really realize it kind of when it's not there anymore. Just everyone being basically presentable or like in shape or whatever, and it's I mean, as soon as it kind of hit the plane going back to America, it's like there were like these behemoths calling for like souvenir Kit Kats, like we need to get some Kit Kats, like, and just dripping in sweat and consuming global homo and everything. It was interesting. It was like a horror poetry.
And John Rourke is 800 pounds. Just so you know.
I paid for 3 seats myself. But, I'm no slouch, but I mean, these Kit Kat lovers were just taking it right to the gullet.
Yeah, because Japan has like all sorts of different flavors of Kit Kats that you can't find in the U.S.
Yeah.
So they were just going to town and
they flew visited just for the Kit Kats. And just like vegetating for a week on Kit Kats. I don't know.
The only other thing about a dress that I want to bring up is there was very few yoga pants or athleisure. There's mostly like skirts. So that was. I don't really like yoga pants, even though they look kind of good to some extent. Not for myself, but I'm talking about even on chicks.
I don't know. I look good in a pair of yoga pants.
Yeah, Softy looks great in a pair of yoga pants.
Yeah.
But a lot of the women also wear surgical masks, like the ones that you see in China, but not because it's polluted. Like Tokyo is like by far probably the least polluted big city.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't even have like any rancid smell like you smell in New York, and it doesn't have anywhere near what I've heard there is in China in terms of pollution, because I don't think there's a lot of manufacturing there. So, but even so, people still wear these surgical masks because they're so polite and so conscious of others that they don't want to infect other people with their germs. And sometimes if the women don't wear makeup in the morning and they want to like hide their face, or if there's like a blemish on their face or something, they'll also wear the surgical mask over the lower face. So there are various reasons for it, but you actually do see that, and I was surprised that was the case, but that was interesting. So yeah, I talked about the Shinkansen earlier, about the JR Pass, and getting both the JR Pass and the Suica card is a good move if you want to travel on both the subway and travel along all the main lines between different cities with the Shinkansen. And yeah, like we saw some interesting things there, like in Oshiage, I think that's how you say it. That's in where the Tokyo Skytree is, and in Japan they're still building like taller buildings, even though their economy isn't like the hottest economy in the world. And because of like lower population growth, they're still building like a lot of really impressive structures, like the Tokyo Skytree, which is the second biggest building after the one in Dubai. And the Shinkansens are really beautiful and really well maintained.
Yeah, the construction in general seemed pretty inconspicuous. To be honest, I mean,
yeah,
they probably have pretty good, consistent kind of maintenance of their infrastructure and such. And I guess like building up a lot for their buildings, kind of keeps things more contained instead of spreading out and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. We didn't really see a lot of work on kind of streets and stuff. It was kind of more in and around buildings.
Not so much.
I mean, we interacted with the trains a lot, so didn't really go by car at all. But yeah, I mean, I guess just again an extension of kind of their culture and stuff and how they treat these different things. So
yeah, in terms of the JR Pass, you could actually get away with like hopping on a train and like not paying, because they rarely check in the train if you have the JR Pass. You just basically use the JR Pass, show it to an attendant to go past the turnstile and go into the station, and then you just hop on a train, and then you just use the JR Pass to get past the turnstile when you're leaving the train station. So you could theoretically use the JR Pass inappropriately, but I wouldn't recommend that because that's not like honest. And
I feel like they would know though, because some of these trains, I mean, they probably know the schedules, right? If you take the faster Shinkansen,
I don't know. Yeah.
And you get
some of them inherently, like the reason you can't use them with the JR is they're for more business, or I mean there would only be pretty much Asian travelers on it, I guess. So you. But
I feel like you could just hang out for a while there.
Yeah, maybe.
And then leave the station. So maybe they wouldn't know. I don't know. But I wouldn't recommend doing that. But because there's what's the one you can't take?
Wink.
It's the Nozomi.
The Nozomi line you can't take with the JR Pass.
I think one or two other ones, but yeah.
That's one of the Shinkansens you can't take.
They'd see your fat ass sitting down on the train, and they'd be like, "You ain't Japanese." Yeah. So.
Filthy guy, Gene.
Exactly.
But yeah, as I said earlier, even at the 7-Elevens, there's actually mostly Japanese people, and there's some Chinese, but there's most of the Japanese people, including even like these older guys who are clearly Japanese too, basically just go all around the country and dump out and like refill the vending machines. Like there's so many of them, and they just do that as like a cool retirement job. So like there's like a lot of good jobs like in Japan for Japanese people that are like paid pretty well. They're just like even menial labor whereas in the U.S. we always have like cheap labor from abroad that does all this stuff. So that must be kind of cool that they do that. So there's not as much of a white god factor like after 2010 from what I've heard, but you could still fit in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, they do a good job of protecting their own businesses. I think something like 53% of the world's oldest companies are actually located in Japan. Really? Because they're passed on from family member to family member, and sometimes they'll even adopt a family member to continue to pass it on to someone who's more capable, so that the business continues. And a lot of these businesses are subsidized, and a lot of these are like, some of them are religious themed businesses, and some of them are corporations. But Japan definitely has some of the older businesses of the world. And a lot of the companies are domestically owned instead of foreign owned. So even though you will see 7-Eleven or Wendy's or McDonald's, you still will see a lot of local, mostly local brands, I think, dominate the economy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool to see kind of just how they incorporate, modernity and preserve their traditions and stuff. I mean, I think that's kind of an Asian aesthetics too, kind of intentionally leaving some things that are based in tradition, kind of as they are, or not always, despite being very techy, not knowing kind of when to stop or when to draw the line and stuff. So it's kind of interesting, just kind of some of the things you come across that you're kind of like, oh wow, that's, you'd expect kind of almost more from such a technological society, but they do that intentionally, I guess, which is kind of cool. I don't know.
Yeah, the Japanese don't really have like the same type of self-hatred that like the Germans show, for instance.
Yeah.
And the Japanese, like they promote their culture and Japaneseness, and even at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum, they sort of, it was pretty brutal when the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, but they do show the gore and the people who were affected by the bomb, and basically paint themselves as the victim, which to some extent they were, and so that they basically defend their culture and don't just sort of cuck on saying that they were the evil aggressors.
I mean, they're not going to culturally self-neuter until it comes to actually having kids, and then they do, which is it's still a weird thing. I mean, that doesn't really. There wasn't a lot in our trip, I guess, that kind of screamed, why that would be as much of a problem as
there's plenty. There's actually plenty of young people in Japan when you go there. It's just that like it's such a big population, it's hard to sustain because parents pay so much for like their kids' violin lessons and like school after school. Having an out of wedlock pregnancy is so rare. It's mostly like 2-parent homes. That's part of the reason why people save up to have kids and they have less kids. It's more of a responsibility thing.
Well, the cost of living is probably just so much. I mean, it's the same for Americans working 2 jobs, I guess, per household or whatever. I guess
in the U.S. we just have such high migration that it counters out our super low birth rate. So that's the reason why you don't see it here. But it's a similar thing among whites here, for instance. Yeah. So yeah, and even with regard to like we were there like just as June was coming around, and there apparently is, not always, sometimes it actually gets canceled, but there is actually supposed to be an annual gay pride parade in Tokyo. But even for the gay pride parade, they don't put up all the rainbows, and they regulate it so that you have to dress respectfully. You can't just whip out your parts or have pedophilia or nudity or any of those type of themes. You have to like almost dress as if you were a church group. I've heard other people talk about this before online. And you have to be
just evangelical or whatever. You just,
but you have it's mmostly foreigners, and you have to be respectful for this. So there's less of that too. But
gay pride.
That's how you say it. Yeah, a lot of the Japanese joke about how
Thank you.
They basically just say McDonald dudes or
McDonald dudes
or Starbucks soup. They just add in on the ending. They say it just like in the U.S. if it's a foreign brand. That's kind of funny.
And we did try some of the, well, they're foreign. They're they're foreign for them. But the brands, the McDonald's and the Wendy's and stuff over there, and it was interesting.
They have spaghetti at the Wendy's. And they have eggs on a hamburger at the Wendy's.
And they got like more gourmet pizza at like a Pizza Hut. Like you can get pesto or like octopus and spicy mayo or something like that. It's kind of interesting. It's we lost some weight there. Just eating better.
The thing I found most interesting about these fast food restaurants we visited in Japan was the sort of the layout of them. They had the footprint of the store was quite small, but the total floor space is honestly pretty comparable to a restaurant here. It's spread out over multiple floors.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's some of them were had like a top floor and all that. Yeah. Like a high rise, almost like in New York. Tokyo.
Yeah, that Wendy's had like 5 floors or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Climbing up and then.
Yeah.
Yeah, you like ordered on the first floor, and then there were like 3 or 4 floors of just like seating, but like each individual floor is only the size of like a living room or something.
Right. Yeah. But Japanese food is known for being some of the best in the world. It's a very light diet with like a lot of rice and meat and seafood, and I'm gonna butcher this word, but
Oh God.
In Hiroshima, we had something called okonomiyaki. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
It's like a pancake with seafood, eggs, and pasta. And that was very interesting. They put it on like this grill. They didn't know what I said when I said hibachi, which is like a style of grilling I've seen here in the U.S. for Japanese restaurants. They're like, what the hell is that? No.
Yeah, this is like something made up for Americans.
Yeah,
it means like spider corn or like, I don't know. It doesn't even mean anything, but they just like throw it out there.
But yeah, they put this like batter down, and then they but yeah, they put this like batter down, and then they put like seafood and like noodles and stuff on it, and they like make a little pancake out of it. And then we also had yakiniku barbecue, which is where there's like this little stove in front of you, and you like roast this meat, and they refer to like bacon basically as pork, and that was fun. You know, you have this little stove. And
That was
like,
shocking. Pork and there was no word for bacon. No.
yeah, like, bacon. And one of the weirder experiences I had there was in Akihabara, the anime capital of the world, which is a little bit too commercialized for me in many ways, but like it's still kind of cool. They had you know, these various maid cafes. I wish I would have gotten the ice cream because it's known for the ice cream a lot, but we got mostly the curry. And
well, we took a bite out of something.
and yeah, well, we went up there, and like I got hit by the elevator. Apparently the Japanese elevators like close more easily, so I was like getting hit in the shoulder, and that was kind of painful.
I guess for anybody who doesn't know what a maid cafe is,
Look it up.
Think
Look it
Hooters,
up, yeah.
and then forget Hooters because it's nothing like Hooters.
Yeah, it's basically.
I mean, it's similar in the concept that you go there for the waitresses.
Cryptic speak.
Wait, what did you say, Softy?
It's similar in the idea that you go there for the waitresses, not the food.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
The waitresses like basically are doing air drums, and they're like dancing on a stage in a really like strange squeaky voice, and they're serving you this food.
Yeah.
And there's tons of videos about maid cafes online that many of these journalists have like done to like say, ooh, it's like a fantasy.
Yeah.
Or something. Yeah.
But then a middle school was like taking a field trip to the maid cafe, and all of the boys, of course, were like
Can you
covering
imagine
their faces and stuff.
They had
and
the blush.
And yeah.
Can you
and the
imagine
girls were laughing at
a
them,
liberal like public school teacher in the U.S. doing that? Like these public school teachers were like a male and a female were taking their whole class to this maid
and
cafe.
they were
It was
they were
hilarious.
just joking around and like taking pictures and stuff. I mean,
I thought that was
great. Pretty interesting.
That was the highlight for me.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'm not exactly sure why you would go there when you have all of this rich culture surrounding you. But
I don't know.
I guess it's a break.
There was a lot of field trips. I mean, we saw the
Yeah.
yellow hats or whatever. Like, Softy? Those originated from the war or something? That like don't bomb us or like do bomb us? No. What was going on with those yellow hats? I thought there was a story behind it.
What I've heard is basically they're just like hard hats or whatever to protect kids from American bombs or something.
Huh.
But
yeah, these
Those are
are
the trick.
Yeah, because now it's like Caillou or whatever. Who's that the kid with the cancer or with the head? Yeah.
cancer patients.
Yeah. Now it just looks like that, and it's kind of ducks in a row.
Yeah, they used to be helmets, but now like a lot of Japanese like school children who are walking out on the town wear like blue or yellow like little hats that are felt that like commemorate essentially those like hard hats that they wore when there was bombings in World War II. But in terms of food, another thing that we didn't have, but like there's other things that are really exotic, like chanko nabe, which has sake with chicken broth, fish, tofu, meat, and vegetables. There's something called fugu, which is made from pufferfish meat and gives you a bit of a buzz when you eat it, and you need a license to prepare it. There's
pufferfish can like be extremely toxic if you don't prepare it correctly.
Yeah. People use it in like Haiti to drug each other or something. I don't know.
Mrs. Puff is very sinister, I guess.
Puff,
Not that kind of puff.
Yeah.
There's also something called onigiri, which I had the misfortune of trying, which is like some of the worst tasting shit I've had. It's like
we had a natto onigiri with
you're thinking of
natto in it,
natto
which was
specifically.
pretty foul.
Oh yeah.
Onigiri
Yeah.
just means like rice balls.
Yeah.
Which they were good ones. But
Oh yeah, I had a rice ball that had like fermented beans or something in it, and it was so awful. And like, I guess people just like learn to scarf it down.
Oh yeah, I mean, I asked our Jap friends that were there, and they were like, "Yeah, you just grow up with it. You just eat it when you're a
No
baby."
one actually likes it. You just get used to it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's got to be like have nutritional value, I guess, which is why you just like stomach it.
Yeah,
But,
I guess it's
no.
got some good like vitamin content.
Yeah.
I guess
Maybe that's why they're so thin.
they just vomit out this stuff.
The mystery. All you have to do is have a little self-control. Like that's the mystery. But there's all these different avenues.
But
oh man.
I know, there's the robot restaurant that a lot of people go to when they go to Japan, which from what I've heard, it's become too family friendly and commercialized. It used to be like
Send me over, Mr. Roboto.
it used to be more like a it's pretty expensive now. It's like over $100, and like we didn't go to it, but it's located in the red light district. And to be honest with you, I think we did pass through the red light district, but it was like only a little bit weirder than like what you would expect. So like I didn't even barely notice it. I think like there was a few weird looking people and like this like really small midget person with like a umbrella that I noticed, and like some weird looking like drugstores, but I think that was it. And there's actually gang members that do live there, but like we couldn't barely even tell, to be honest with you, because it's so safe there.
I didn't see no midget. I don't know what
What are you talking about?
there was no midget.
Oh, that must have been like an acid trip. No.
Yeah.
Too much natto.
But yeah.
But yeah, you can leave your bike like near the train station, and no one will steal it there. And there's basically no tolerance for drugs, although people do take stimulants because like there's a workaholic culture where they have to like get the job done. Although I've heard that the work culture in some ways they work long hours, but it's even less stressful in some ways than the U.S. From what I've heard, actually, I don't know if that's totally true, but I've heard that.
But yeah, doesn't Japan have? I mean, is that true about like the suicide rate being incredibly high, or is?
But the U.S. is catching up.
Yeah,
basically, to
suicide
Japan.
rate is the highest in like the developed world.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah,
only
the
like
U.S. suicide rate is approaching.
Yeah, I mean,
the Japanese suicide rate is like 13 suicides
like
per 100,000.
something we should be proud of.
And the U.S. is like 12, so it's like almost there already.
Yeah.
But
And
anyway,
of course, in the U.S., it's almost all men that kill themselves.
basically, yeah. And but yeah, the cops are downtown. Also, like instead of like in the U.S., I'm sure Black Lives Matter would like skook you if you like went downtown. If you went downtown and you like the police actually police areas that are violent, but essentially in Tokyo, even though there's no crime, there is a heavy police presence like near the Royal Palace.
that was interesting. I was kind of surprised.
Like downtown, and like
How
not
many
so
are
much
around?
on the highway, just giving like speeding tickets. Although I don't
Yeah.
actually know for sure about that because we didn't drive. But
Yeah.
I mean, most of it was just downtown guarding the areas that need the protecting. So
I got whistled at though. That was.
Oh yeah, you were trying.
he
to
tried to.
I walked on some bad grass.
Yeah.
He wasn't supposed to walk across the street on this
Yeah.
grass. But they protect their grass.
Yeah, one thing I found interesting is also like pretty much all the police we saw had guns, but it's not like in the U.S. where the cops are like, you know, have like assault rifles or whatever. They've all got 5-shot revolvers.
Yeah, because that's all
Which
they need. Cause, like,
It's really all you need because you're not gonna be confronted with some like Kang dual wielding Glocks or something like that. You're gonna have like a mugger with a knife.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So it's. I mean, they don't have to deal with the same kind of criminals we do here. So, yeah, and it's even more just like a cultural thing. I mean, I know we have more guns in circulation, but it's mostly a cultural thing in
Yeah.
terms of violence. But anyway, in the public bathrooms, one nice thing about them is they have bidets, which are like a French-Italian invention essentially, and like. I guess the reason why we don't have bidets in the U.S. is because of like the British don't like the French and Italians, but the Japanese.
Oh, you're supposed to pull yourself up by your bootstraps with one hand and then wipe yourself with the other. That's what you're supposed to do. Come on. Bootstraps.
Bootstrap Bill.
Yeah.
No, but essentially, like in the U.S. it doesn't make any sense because like unless you take like a wet wipe with you, how are you supposed to wipe yourself in a public bathroom even if there's toilet paper? Like it's honestly kind of disgusting. Whereas in Japan, this bidet, which is just like a control panel on the side, and there's like actually like the little faucet in the toilet, like washing your bum. Like essentially that's much cleaner than like just. Or much more convenient than bringing like a
Yeah,
wipe.
it's got a cute little voice too. No, like it style, like Georgie, come to me. I don't know what he's
There's a
looking
head
at.
in the
but
toilet. No.
Yeah.
But
Lick.
one thing is like Softy said that he may have gotten like a little bit of a sinus infection because there's no.
I think
soap
I got
in the
that in Toronto though, but yeah.
Yeah, because there actually is no hand soap. But I mean,
Yeah,
it's easier to remember.
almost none of the public bathrooms had soap in them, and almost none of them even had hand dryers either, which is
Yeah.
weird. Like no paper
So-
towels, no hand dryers, just like a sink with no soap.
Yeah, so essentially you have to bring, like, you might have to remember to bring, like, hand sanitizer with you in the bathroom, but, like, wiping yourself, like, more easily with, like, this bidet makes things less messy, and then you just have to remember the hand sanitizer. You don't have to, like, bring, like, toilet paper or, like, a bunch of stuff to clean yourself in the bathroom, like in the U.S.
Unless you have a skookum high that you have to just. Oh.
It's like, I don't know why we don't have that here. That's kind of seems like almost a bit uncivilized here.
I mean, well, have you seen the states of the public bathrooms in the U.S. and stuff? I mean, I don't know.
The U.S. is turning into
We
a
have
public
no
bathroom.
like respect essentially or no
California.
capability of any of like the public.
Yeah, look at California streets. Yeah.
California
I
is
mean-
literally a public bathroom.
Basically.
Yeah, just scrape yourself off as you kind of.
In China, I've heard they have no toilet paper though. Actually, so you have to like use your sock or something because people will steal the freaking toilet
That kind
paper.
of sounds like an urban legend, or I don't know.
I think it's actually true, but I don't know.
You
Not
it's
everywhere.
chopsticks with everything. I thought.
But actually, speaking of chopsticks, yeah, they actually only have chopsticks like at
Yeah.
the store. They don't have forks really.
Yeah, I didn't see a single.
They have, like-
well, maybe in like one more
Wooden
American
chopsticks, yeah.
Some of the
restaurant, but
restaurants had like
Yeah.
Yeah,
silverware,
that's
kind
but-
of tucked away, under the table or something. No, not really.
If you had to bring them out, you were, yeah, it was shameful.
Yeah.
You might as well have used them to make seppuku right there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Totally
on
agree.
Father's
Like
Day, I went
spaghetti.
to a Japanese restaurant with my dad, and like didn't give me chopsticks. I'm like, what is this? How am I supposed to eat Japanese food without chopsticks? It feels so
You-
wrong.
Yeah, even the Japanese American restaurant has become Americanized.
Yeah.
Hibachi.
Yeah.
Hibachi, speaking English,
Yeah, it was hibachi actually.
So typical.
doing
Yeah.
tipping. Yeah,
Yeah.
Just the
getting
tip.
just the tip.
There it is.
One of Softy's key phrases. No.
Yes.
Yeah.
His
He's got such a
catchphrase.
way with words.
But yeah, in terms of unfortunately, one unfortunate thing is a lot of the temples and monuments in Japan were originally made out of wood, so a lot of these things have been ongoing renovations since they were first built. Even so, like I guess compared to like there's a lot more history in Japan than there is in the U.S. and I'm gonna write another article about how I think that like in terms of cost, in terms of like cleanliness, in terms of overall experience, Tokyo is a better city like culturally as well and just all around than New York, I would say. Even though New York probably has maybe a little bit easier for international people to adapt to, but like even though it is great, but some of the really old stuff, because it was made out of wood, has burnt down. So if you've been to Europe, for
Well,
example,
there was also that little incident where the United States firebombed Tokyo and burned the entire city to the ground at a
right,
single
right.
night.
It also endured, World War II fire bombings. So because of that, and because of like it just rot like in the 1950s, the Golden Palace, which has been restored by now, which is really impressive, that was burnt down by like this suicidal monk, and it's actually really crowded these days. It's in Kyoto.
Yeah.
There's a lot of tourists there, but basically that was built in like the 1200s as a Zen Buddhist monastery. It was actually 1397 it says. So that was restored really nicely, and you're not actually allowed to go in it, but it looks like the inside from the photos is really impressive as well. But like that obviously was renovated. Only the stone portion of Edo Castle is left in near the Imperial Palace. That's worth seeing. Most of Kyoto, the original ancestral palace in Kyoto is there, and that has undergone renovations in the 1800s, but that is still was protected by from the bombings during World War II. One of the most impressive things there is in 1333 there was the Himeji Castle, which is in between Kyoto and Hiroshima, and we stopped there, and they call it the White Heron of Japan. It's this beautiful white castle that's like towering above the city, and that's definitely a must-see. And there's supposed to be armor from the castle, samurai armor, somewhere nearby, but it's not in the castle itself. But you can go inside the castle itself.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Inside, I don't know. Inside was actually a little disappointing, I guess.
Well, there's not like the placards or like the kind of things you see in American kind of homestead or something where it's kind of like this is what this is and stuff. You kind of just walk through, and there wasn't signage really at all.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Well, I was gonna
There
say,
was
yeah.
some, but it was Japanese.
Yeah.
Well, maybe a
Darn.
little bit, but
I was gonna say, yeah, like if you've been to Europe or something like that, or Egypt or something of that nature, there probably are like more in some ways a little bit more impressive like intact castles and cathedrals because they're made out of stone. So like, but you know, compared to the U.S. or compared to almost anywhere else in Asia, Japan has preserved their structures better than pretty much anywhere. So it's still really great. And was that a skookum? No. Oh, I thought I heard something. But there a few other things. There's the Fushimi Inari Shrine in Kyoto, and that's a must see. That's a Shinto shrine rather than Buddhist, and that was built in 7-Eleven, like the place. And the main structures were built in 1499, and there's thousands or like at least 1,000 of these torii gates that just you can take the train there from downtown Kyoto to the entrance of the temple. And if you go there at night, you know, there's just these like 1,000 gates leading up this mountain. It's a longer hike than you would think. We were actually kind of getting tired out from that. But there's some, even like early on in the hike, well, there's vending machines on the side too if you need to stop. But there's a great view of the city that you can see at night. It's really amazing.
Yeah, I mean, at night too, we pretty much had the place to ourselves. I mean, there were some people walking around, but yeah, we got to kind of go by ourselves, and
yeah, we owned that joint.
It was, yeah, I mean, parts of it were lit up, and like it gave this kind of spooky feel, and then other parts were just kind of dark.
It was cool.
It was like going through this hallway basically up the mountain, but they're all just these gates that were sandwiched together. So,
and there's actually signs about like wild boars and monkeys there, but we didn't see any of those. But we did see a lot of cats at night. We did see those. I've heard that that's the case. And I'm just seeing that Softy dropped out of the call, so I guess we'll have to get back to him later. But if we can get him back on here, but thanks for being on here, Softy. And
he made it all the way to Japan and back,
but he couldn't make it through the call.
Leave him.
But yeah, there's a lot of great things that you can see in terms of these different shrines, these different temples, Buddhist temples, the castles. There's also a castle, I believe, in there's one in Kyoto. There's the royal palaces in Kyoto and Tokyo. And there's some, I think there's a very impressive castle in Osaka too. There's also the tomb of the Emperor Meiji in the Kyoto area. There's all these keyhole tombs that were built throughout the Kyoto area, which is the ancestral homeland of
that's right.
the Japanese royalty. And the Emperor Meiji, he has like it's a little bit hard to get to by train, but it's like south, in the southern part of Kyoto, there's like these mounds that have like a large round stone over them and like a torii gate in front of the entrance. And I don't know if that's necessarily worth a big visit, but
it didn't make the cut, but
we didn't do that.
But, seeing, so.
But that's something to be on the lookout for. Yeah, and as we said, that about half of the Japanese population speaks English pretty well, and the other half speaks at least some English. So you won't have too much trouble communicating there. It's not completely.
I've heard that if you write things down for people, they'll understand it more in English than if you actually speak it, because I guess they study English enough to recognize it when they look at it, but not always when they hear it.
I feel like that's true of any language, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a useless tidbit.
But yeah, if you need
eightfold path, peace,
eightfold whooping.
But yeah, if you need directions with the train system, the Hyperdia app is great for finding train times and I think even train locations. And
well, I mean, just getting a pocket, Wi-Fi to charge you charge it every night, and you just have it during the day. You pick it up at a station, basically.
Yeah, the pocket Wi-Fi helps a lot.
Yeah, Google Maps is good too.
Unless you trust your data plan a lot, but it was great with the Wi-Fi for sure.
So extend your phone service. Maybe it's like $10 a day. Get the pocket Wi-Fi. Get the Hyperdia, HYPERDIA app, which will tell you about the train times and things like that. And that's how you'll be able to get around there. And usually the kanji has an English translation under it for most of the major signs, like pretty much everywhere except in small towns.
Yeah,
So
I mean, or at least the train stations and stuff. Like as someone said when we were there, the cities or everything kind of flows through the Shinkansen or through the train stations.
yeah, the train stations are like the downtown in Japan.
Yeah.
Just like a church or a courthouse would be the downtown on like Main Street in America, as they call it, downtown. So the train station is where everything happens in Japan. It has some of the busiest train stations in the world, as I've said. So.
Yeah, and those are always in English. The signage sort of, so if you can find your way there, you can find your way anywhere.
So a few other things that we didn't get to see in Japan. I talked about some of these. The robot restaurant. There's something called Street Cart Shinagawa. Shinagawa is in Tokyo. You need an international driver's license, but you actually can drive downtown in Tokyo with a guide, and they drive on the left in Japan. And there's various like feudal reasons why they're on the left, like in Britain as well. But Japan's one of the few that drives on the left, like Britain and New Zealand and Australia and Ireland. But you can pay a few $100s for this, and you get to go in a Mario go-kart and dress up in the cosplay of Mario and go around Tokyo, and they give you a tour of the city. That's pretty cool. It's a little pricey, but people say it's well worth it, actually.
All right, Logan Paul.
Yeah, that's right.
Logan Paul ruined it for everyone. But there's also something that I wish I would have done. We thought about doing it. It's called Deer Stage. It's in Akihabara. And it's kind of a shady-looking building, but I think it's fine. And it's basically... it's a building where they give you dinner. And apparently some upcoming idols will perform there. And some of the past idols who have made it to success have performed there when they were starting their career. But yeah, they give you dinner and drinks, and it seems like it's better entertainment than the Maid Cafe. That's Deer Stage. It's a little performance. One thing I wanted to do as well was Kabuki Theater. You have to book this a few weeks in advance, so we missed it. But it takes a while. It's like ordering a car in the Soviet Union. But yeah, as far as the Kabuki Theater, it's hard to book this. It takes like a few weeks. Yeah, the Kabuki-za Theater in Tokyo is where you can see some of the best Kabuki theater. It's mostly drama and dance with like the face paint and the kimonos and the geisha girls and all the works. But this isn't a pizza I'm talking about, so. And another thing we didn't do is going to the top of Tokyo Skytree. We did go to the free Tokyo Metropolitan Government Building because I'm cheap. We got a good view of Tokyo, and it's interesting because there's a lot of high rises, but it's also zoned in such a way that there's a lot of like regular like homes even downtown.
Yeah.
And like historic buildings, homes,
Yeah, it was a cool
high
balance,
rises.
for sure, yeah.
It's very, and you can even see Mount Fuji. It was cloudy, but we could see like just the tip, as Softy likes to say, of it.
He's gone.
But the Tokyo Metro building is free to go to. You can take a subway there, and you can see the city. But the Tokyo Skytree is the second biggest building in the world, so it probably would be worth going up there. But I think it's at least $30 or $40. Hiking Mount Fuji would be cool too, but it's you have to go in like just July or August because it's still cold up there.
Limited, yeah, I think it's
and
only
there's high
2
winds.
months hiking season or something.
So it's not a long hiking season.
Yeah.
You can see a sumo training or sumo wrestling match. And this is one of the things that Trump went to. And as I said, we actually got to see him there. Usually the sumo matches are the tournaments are in May and September in Tokyo. But you can see a practice session or a stable tour. It's almost like a horse, they call it, in other months of the year. Or you can go see a match in another city, maybe in other months of the year. And you can participate in samurai lessons in Tokyo for around $100. And Kyoto also offers it. You wear like a robe and you swing the sword. They let you cut like a straw man argument.
Yeah.
And there's ninja lessons in Tokyo for about $100. You can do that too, I've heard.
Which sounds very gimmicky, I say.
I guess it's a real dojo, but yeah, you can see all this. There's a capsule hotel where like these guys who are going out clubbing and they get drunk, if they don't want to come home drunk, they usually go to this like little capsule and they like, it almost looks like one of those cubby holes in the concentration camps. Yeah, you basically sleep in one of these like cubby holes, and there's like a communal bath and all that, and it's pretty cheap, so that's why people do it. But it feels like that would be a little bit uncomfortable, so we didn't do that.
Yeah.
All the analogies are just brimming with endorsement. Communal baths too. Concentration camp style. Oh man. Yeah.
But yeah, there's something called the Kundani Monkey Park. I don't know how to say that. It's a volcanic hot spring with like where macaques soak in the water. I'm sure people have seen pictures of this before. It's pretty far west of Tokyo, but that's another thing that we didn't see that would have been kind of interesting, I guess. A JR pass and a bus together will bring you there, apparently. Unfortunately, we were there when we missed a lot of the festivals. Most of the festivals are in the spring or the summer. The Gion Matsuri Festival is in Kyoto, has a lot of decorative floats, and someone told us that it was one of his favorite festivals that he's seen in Japan, a foreigner. And
No,
this is
the midget said that, right? No.
this is in July, and
And he flew away with his umbrella.
the one I saw that no one saw.
Lin-Manuel.
It was the guy who wrote Hamilton, yeah. And the Chichibu Night Festival is in December near Tokyo, and that's supposed to be good. There's a Sapporo Winter Festival, which has a lot of great ice sculptures, and yeah, as I said, the JR doesn't go up to Hokkaido, but so you'd have to take a different train there. But those are some of the most notable festivals. And there's a lot of volcanoes in the far north and the far south of Japan, and a decent number of them are active volcanoes. With there's nice views in the south where it's more tropical and you can see the volcanoes in the background. That would be another thing to keep your radar on. And there's also a boat that goes from Tokyo. There's something called the Agasawara Islands, which is a 24-hour boat ride that's only a few times a week. It's actually part of Tokyo, but it's really far away from Tokyo. And it's a tropical series of islands that used to belong to the US, and you can go there. So that would be those are all things that I definitely would say I would go back to Japan. It was pretty cool. It's one of the places in Asia that I would definitely be interested in returning to.
Yeah.
And those are things that I would keep in mind in the future.
I mean, yeah, we only stayed. I guess it was technically a week, but it was shorter because of our travel time. So
right.
If we could have stayed 2 weeks, then yeah, I mean, this would have been great.
But yeah, this trip was well worth it. And in the future, maybe I'd like to go to Europe or maybe Egypt or something that's exotic like this. But this is definitely one of the best places, probably the best place to go in Asia. So I would highly recommend it. And,
you didn't really mention Africa too much. Or Central Africa. That's weird.
But
that's weird.
It's so peaceful. No.
Somebody stop that man.
But I think I'll wrap it up there, and thank you everyone for participating. I thought Softy was back, but he wasn't recording, so I couldn't pick him up. But
we love him anyway.
Thank you everyone for participating, and please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Peace out.
All right. Good night, you skooks.